With Set 2 of Star Wars Unlimited on the horizon, it's time for us to start brewing and theory crafting new decks, and also taking our old decks from Set 1 and updating them for the new meta. I'm so excited about brewing new decks on this channel and sharing them with you all, but if you know me, you know that Han Solo was my #1 deck in Set 1. I love this deck so much, and that's why when I saw all the new tools that it was getting in Set 2, I couldn't help but updating this list and sharing it with you all. Greetings Internet, DDA here, and if you've seen any of my previous Han Solo videos, those videos are going to go more in depth on how to play and how to use the specific cards in the Han Solo decks. In this video, I more want to focus on how I'm changing the deck and how the new cards are going to fit in the Han Solo deck. So to start out here, the first thing I want to mention in this list is you can see we're still running 3 Greedo. That's really important. I don't think this guy is going to go anywhere for a long time. He's 1 cost with U-Wing, very powerful to put 10 power on the board with an Echo-based defender. Spark of Rebellion did go down to 2 for me in the updated list. We're going to get into that a little later on why we did that. And then you can see in our 2 drops, we have our first brand new card, an uncommon from Set 2 Shadows of the Galaxy. We have Spark of Hope. I think this card is going to set the stage for hero green decks in the future. The interesting thing about it is, you know, a lot of people are downplaying the power of this card right now. I think in aggro decks, it really doesn't have a place, but why are you playing ramp in aggro anyway? In control decks, it's a little hard to use because those decks don't play that many units. But in mid-range decks, this card perfectly plays into our playstyle. If we are up against another aggro or mid-range deck, the style of play that we have as mid-range is to trade our units to slow down the game, usually, to then enable our late game combo. The thing I love about Spark of Hope is it doesn't have a tell like the Collect Your Head bounty card. I can't remember the name. But like that's a bounty you have to put on your opponent's unit. There's a lot of counterplay that they can do as in response to you doing that. Whereas with Spark of Hope, there is no tell. You're just going to be doing what you normally do, trading units, and then all of a sudden you're going to play a 2-cost Spark of Hope and ramp yourself. We all know how powerful resupply is with Han Solo. This card is just going to amplify that. Every single game, you're going to be bringing out Han Solo on turn 3. It's going to be very, very powerful. And because we're enabling this quicker ramp, we are getting to our late game units faster. We actually shifted the curve of our deck more towards late game. Now, the next change we made was we actually dropped Homestead Militia. I know, my buddy, I'm sorry. I'm sad to see him go. He did so good in Set 1 Spark of Rebellion on those U-Wings and turn 1 plays. We're going to keep Ezra around for now, but we actually replaced Homestead Militia with Tech. Now, I love this guy so much. I think he's going to enable so many awesome combos. The #1 thing about Han Solo, especially in the late game, is that you just run out of gas, you run out of draw, you have all these resources and no cards in your hand to utilize them. Well, Tech is going to solve that issue for you, making your entire resource line basically your hand. And in a deck that plays 6 ramp and your leader double ramps for you, you're going to have enough resources to pay that extra 2 cost for the smuggle. It's an incredibly powerful card. I think we're going to be seeing it a lot, and I think it especially has a wonderful home here in Han Solo. Basically, I feel like it's just better Lando. Lando was a card that you used late game to bounce some of your resources back into your hand, gives you a form of card draw, but you actually lost resources doing that. Tech is not going to do that for you. He's actually going to replace the resources with the smuggle mechanic. It's just much better and much more consistent. Plus, you can get it out with Home 1. So a late game play could be Home 1 as your last card in your hand. You know, you're expending all your resources, and then you bring out Tech, and then all of a sudden, next turn, you have another huge blowout turn because you have Tech. Now, this guy is so good. I actually have one of him in the sideboard as well to sideboard in to play a full suite of 3 of him against the control decks. I think it's going to be just very key. And another thing I want to note is this deck also is still at 52. I think it's okay. Like, our leader burns cards. Tech is going to now burn cards. Anything with smuggle burns cards. You're going to be burning a lot of cards off the top of your deck, and I'm okay to be at 52. The next change we made for the set 2 of Han is we swapped out Waylay for Spare the Target, which is a pretty even change. Not too much to say about it. We never really used the self-bouncing mechanic in this deck, so that's fine. It is a lot more meta impactful, Spare the Target, because it does collect a bounty, and bounties should be somewhere in the meta, so we actually do sideboard the 3rd copy just in case we're playing a bounty deck and we want, or a deck with a lot of bounties, so we want to bounce those and claim those bounties. The next change we made in this deck is we dropped that single Spark of Rebellion and our 2 copies of Chewbacca for 3 copies of Qi'ra. Now, this girl is going to be meta dominating for a very, very, very long time. Now, the power of Spark of Rebellion is shown here. Now, granted, Spark of Rebellion is kind of better. It costs less. It permanently removes the target. However, Qi'ra is a body on board with a decent stat line. 3/5 is nothing to sneeze at, and also you can drop her turn 2 with Han power, so you can get that early play and that early power on board, and then just choose something to slow down your opponent. Especially going to like this against aggro decks because, like, Spark was okay against aggro, but not advancing your board is not a good idea. Whereas with Qi'ra, you're going to be able to advance your board and then name that K2, name that For a Cause, name that heroic, Rebel Assault or Heroic Sacrifice, and make it so that they just can't use those cards. Another problem that I ran into a lot is sometimes you spark an opponent and they have 2 copies of the card in your hand that you want to answer. Whether it be, a Entrenched or a Power of the Dark Side or something like that. Well, with Qi'ra, you name the card, so all copies of that card in their hand cost the +3. So it's really, really powerful. I think this card is going to be just very, very prominent in hero decks moving forward. So 3 copies, I feel really good at 3 copies with her in here. Next up, closing out the last changes we made to the deck, we swapped out Azatuk Liberator Gunship for the Marauder. I think this is a very solid change. Marauder is 1 cost higher than Azatuk for a much, much better stat line, and then a crazy powerful effect that could potentially ramp us. We play a lot of 3 copies of most units in this game, most units in this deck, so we probably will be able to activate this ability, but we only play 2 of it because it is very situational, so I felt like 2 was good. However, I wouldn't knock anyone for playing 3 of it because in fact, playing 3 of it enables its own strategy because you then could burn a card, burn itself, and then play itself to activate its own ability. So I wouldn't knock anyone for playing 3 of it. And of course, the reason why the Marauder is so good in Han Solo is because you're burning cards from your hand and placing them in your discard pile by sacrificing your own resources. So you're going to be able to pick and choose. For example, a great play would be to burn your Han Solo unit. Then on the Han flip turn, you can bring out the Marauder to ramp you. Oh, and speaking of cool combos, another combo I wanted to mention is with tech. So let's say, for example, if you played Falcon turn 1, and then turn 2 you really didn't have a great 4-drop, but you still wanted to use Han power to automatically pay for Falcon, so next turn you're not a resource behind. Well, what you can do actually is you can Han power tech and then smuggle him for 4, and then you're actually kind of forcing the Han power for really no detriment to yourself. Just a little nuance there with tech that you can kind of force the Han power if you have Falcon in play to enable you to continue playing on curve. Everything in our top end curve is pretty much the same, except we did add a 3rd copy of Home 1 and a 2nd copy of Reinforcement Walker in here. Again, because we play 6 ramp now, the end game is much better, like much stronger in this deck. The day that I tech out Home 1 for 10 is going to be a good day. I'm gonna have a great day on that day. But just your top end is there, going to round you out for sealing out games. Really, really strong top end. I did want to mention some honorable mentions for this deck that I considered adding, but I ultimately didn't add. The first honorable mention that I wanted to mention was Zori Bliss. When I first read this card, I thought it was going to be a staple in Han, and it's still on my list as trying out. I definitely want to maybe mix some in. But when comparing this card to Tech, I felt like Tech was just better. Tech you can easily get with Home One. It's better off a U-Wing because it's a 3-drop. You can smuggle Tech, and Tech gives you more options for card draw via smuggle. Then I felt Zori. Zori has a better stat line, so I had to consider, but I wanted to mention it, that it's definitely on the list to try. Another honorable mention I wanted to mention is the Art Quinton's Assault Cruiser, however you pronounce that. Another top-end green card that on the surface looks really, really strong. You know, it's an ambush ship that ramps you if it kills a unit. It's pretty strong. It's not bad. I considered it for a while. I have a couple issues with it, namely that you do need to ambush something and kill something for it to have an effect. My main issue with it is that it doesn't kill Avenger. If it was an 8/8 ambush and I could just kill Avenger with it, I would probably play it. But being that it doesn't automatically answer Avenger is honestly my major selling point. I just think Avenger, when it comes to late game ships, the one you're going to see and be put up against is Avenger. And if that's what I'm up against, this is not helping me. So that's why I ultimately didn't play it. I think it's a good card, but it doesn't have a place right now. The final card I wanted to mention that I considered in this deck is Choose Sides. It's very similar to Change of Heart. I still am running Change of Heart in the sideboard. I think it's very important in the control matchup. I think this card is really strong. It's really close for me. I almost did 1-1 in the sideboard, 1 change and 1 choose the sides. The reason I'm sticking with 2 Change of Heart for now is this card is on the line of win more. It's not really win more because you can trade like a 1 cost or a 2 cost for like an Avenger or, you know, a Vader or something big that you could just grab for really, really cheap. I get it. It makes sense. However, you actually need to have that unit in play. And the deck that you're going to use this against is a control deck. And the control deck is going to be destroying all your units. So I felt like change was just better to push out the final damage that you needed. So, but it's up there. I think it's good. It has a place definitely somewhere. So going over final changes we made to the sideboard, I just wanted to mention, so I mentioned we have the 1 tech in the sideboard for control matchups. That makes sense. We actually, as far as I know, this works. In the sideboard, we have 2 DJs. Now, DJ is an interesting card. I actually replaced Bodhi with DJ. His stat line isn't crazy high. However, his effect, when you smuggle him, you steal a resource. So normally his smuggle cost is 2 yellow and 7. So that would cost us 9. That's a really big, hefty cost. However, as far as I understand, with tech, actually everything gains, even if it already has smuggle, it additionally gains that smuggle cost. So in theory, with tech, we could actually play DJ for 5 because he normally costs 3, plus 2 is 5. For 1 yellow and 5, we can drop this guy out. I think in a lot of decks, this is actually going to be pretty sick. Like, for example, if you just think about Boba, like if I'm playing against Boba, if we both hit our 5-drop turn where we would both flip, if the first action I do is to smuggle out DJ to steal a resource, enabling myself to do another 3-drop and deploy, and then stealing away his ability to deploy. Like, if you can steal away your opponent's ability to deploy their leader with DJ, you can swing an entire game with that. So I'm going to try this out. I haven't, like, crazy tested or anything like that. Again, pretty sure DJ is kind of busted with tech. So we're running 2 main and 1 in the side. If you are ever in a situation where you're saying, oh, I should probably side in my 3rd tech, we'll side in the 2 DJs as well because you could steal resources. So that's pretty much it for my breakdown of how I changed Han Solo going into set 2. Obviously, this list is not final, but it's a good starting point, I think, for the starting of the new set. We're going to be coming out with a ton more deck videos, a ton more match videos in set 2, so please stay tuned for those. Hit that subscribe button if you want to see all the best deck techs and guides. And as always, turn your dial to Random Number Gaming for weekly updates on Star Wars Unlimited.